everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at the feature race at Woodbine on Saturday. Race 8 is the Seagram Cup, a Grade 2 event, going 1.16 miles on the synthetic tapetum surface up at Woodbine. Craig, we've got a field of 6 runners signed on, and as we take a look at this field, the morning line points out a heavy favorite in this race is the number 4 Tyson. I wouldn't say that I saw this horse as a 2-5 shot when I was handicapping the race, but definitely he's the horse to beat.
I agree. He is the horse to beat. I wasn't surprised he was favored. I was very surprised when I saw 2-5. I really didn't expect that. And I would be just as surprised if he actually went off that low. But he certainly has a big shot in this spot.
Yeah, it's not the deepest field in the world, but he has at least a couple of two main rivals that have real ability. So we'll see how they bet this race and if Tyson is able to be successful as the likely favorite. And to get a clue about that, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector to see how this race might be run through the opening half mile. And Craig, there's really not much speed in here. I wouldn't have been surprised if the no speed flag had shown up for this race because really nobody in this field is a confirmed front runner. Tyson has run on the lead in the past, but hasn't used that style in recent starts. The number 5 Carruthers does have some early speed, but given the way he faded when he went to the front last time, I'll be surprised if they use those tactics again.
I would think so as well. I think the pace is pretty tricky. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some of the horses on the inside get aggressive just given their post draw. But this is one I just don't really know how the pace is going to play out. So I'll look at the pace projector and just kind of use that as a guide. But I'm not sure how it's going to shape up early.
Yeah, it's definitely a little murky on paper. The number 6 King Max gets that LP flag in the Timeform US pace projector, indicating he has the highest late pace rating in the field. And he's a horse that I wouldn't be surprised if they sent him to the front from the outside since he's been involved in some quicker paced races on the turf. Well, let's go through some of the main contenders in this race. Actually, all of the main contenders, as we'll touch upon each of the 6 runners in this field, beginning with the number 1 Clear Destination. Let's take a look at his last race when he won an optional claiming event, upsetting a field at 24-1 in early July at Woodbine, going the same distance, Craig. And I guess it's a feather in his cap that he was able to handle the distance this day because he had really been concentrating on sprint distances in most of his recent starts. Though overall, this is a horse that's just 3 for 34 in his career, hasn't done a whole lot of winning generally, and it's a big step up in class.
It is. I guess the one good sign would be that he's improving. When you look at his speed figures, he's jumped up 2 times in a row, but it would still be a pretty big jump. Winning at 24-1 in an allowance race, moving up into graded stakes company might be just a little bit too much.
And also in that last race that we just watched was the number 2, 77 Stone, and he wasn't really a factor that day. He went off at 88-1, and I guess ran like an 88-1 shot, losing by 14 lengths. And Craig, this is just a horse that hasn't really been competitive in 7 starts so far this year. Just doesn't really look like he's of this class. He'd be a huge surprise in this race.
Yeah, it feels like maybe a favor to the racing secretary to get a little bigger field. Not sure it's going to matter much to the betting, as this horse, as you said, he's went off 88-1 a couple times in a row. He could very well be 188-1 in this field.
Let's take a look at the Dominion Day, which a lot of these horses are coming out of. Actually, 3 of them, Tyson, Carruthers, and RD Storm, all faced off in this race in early July. And you can kind of see the video is a little hard to decipher because there was a driving rainstorm during this race. That's why it looks a little bit grainy, and clearly wasn't a problem for Tyson, who was able to run down Treason, who I believe was his stablemate this day, and get the job done as those two drew well clear of the rest of the field. Carruthers didn't show up in this spot, and the number 3 RD Storm, Craig, who just ran along at 1 pace to be 5th. He's competed in a couple of these graded stakes recently since coming back from a layoff. Got a piece of the race 2 back when he was 4th in the Eclipse, and then not quite as effective last time. He was in a really good form last year at this time of the year when he was actually 2nd in this race. It just feels like he hasn't gotten back to that form so far during his 5-year-old campaign.
If you like RD Storm, I think you have to be banking on the 3rd start off the layoff, 3rd start of the year, getting them back to that form of last year. Seems a bit of a stretch to me, but I would maybe consider using him more in the underneath spots. Maybe if you didn't like the favorite all that much on top, looking for a price, but finding the winner circle, that seems like a pretty steep task against this group.
Up next is the horse that is that heavy morning line favorite, the number 4 Tyson. We just saw his last victory in the Dominion Day, and Greg, he looked pretty impressive that day, running down that favored leader at the top of the stretch. He was kind of hanging on his left lead, looking a little bit unprofessional. I think that's just him as a gray son of Tapit. A lot of those can be a little goofy. I think we saw some of those antics too back when it looked like he forgot that he was in a race moving around the far turn, but really figured it out towards the end to get third at the end of that eclipse. He's lightly raced. He still has upside. I suppose that's why he's such a short price on the line, but it's not like he's a total standout on speed figures.
No, I agree. His speed figures just kind of fit with the other two horses we're going to talk about next. He was impressive visually. He is lightly raced, as you note, so maybe the morning line makers just looking at that upside where the others have been much more heavily campaigned. But it wasn't that long ago that he finished behind Carruthers without an excuse. And you mentioned the driving rainstorm in the Dominion Day. I wonder if that didn't play a part in him maybe just really getting hold of the surface. And it's something you don't see because all races are listed as fast on synthetic surfaces, but the track can play quite different when it rains than a typical day.
Let's take a look at the stretch run of the Eclipse, which is the race 2 back for both Tyson and Carruthers. And this was actually the day Craig was just referring to a little earlier when Carruthers beat Tyson. And I agree, Tyson didn't have any trouble with the trip this day. He just looked like he was maybe a little unprofessional. You could see he was a little awkward with his lead change there. But Carruthers also not the most focused, as he had trouble changing leads at the top of the stretch. Seemed like he was trying to lug in through the final eighth of a mile of this day, which might have cost him a little bit, though the winner of the race, Treason, who is not running back in here, he's a pretty good one that beat Carruthers. Craig, I guess the big question with Carruthers is what happened last time. That was that race run in a rainstorm, so maybe the conditions weren't to his favor. They also tried a new running style, vying for the lead with two other horses. There was a bit of a pace duel going on that day. It came apart, so maybe they're going to try to go back to the off the pace tactics this time, but it's tough in a race without any speed.
I thought that was a pretty rough trip last time when you watch the replay. He didn't get out well. He wound up with a very wide trip. I think the new tactics were a result of that bad break and being wide, and the jockey just decided to go for the front rather than just be hung wide. It didn't really work out, and given that it was in that driving rainstorm, I just, for myself, am putting a line through that race. I'm expecting a rebound here. Remains to be seen if it'll be good enough to get him to the winner's circle, but he certainly has races in his past performances that say he could do it.
He definitely does. I think that 120 Timeform US speed figure here in 2 back is higher than anything Tyson has run on the Timeform US scale. And then we'll close out the field with the number 6 King Max. Let's take a look at his last race at Monmouth Park when he was an optional claiming winner on the turf. And Craig, I thought this was pretty impressive. He made a 4-wide run to sweep to the lead coming off the far turn, was able to sustain that bid through the stretch. He was also impressive in his US debut 2 back when he was sitting up pretty close to a very fast pace to just slammed the door on that field at the top of the stretch when he easily drew away. This is a horse that might still have some upside, third off the layoff, and he showed real quality in Europe last year, so wouldn't be a surprise if he panned out to be a good one.
No, not at all. I was really impressed with this last race. As you mentioned, it was a big, wide, sweeping move. It was also uncovered. He just did it all on his own, powered to the lead. So understandably, he didn't really draw off after that move, but his speed figures aren't far behind. The only real question is the synthetic, but he did win on a synthetic surface overseas. It's just before what we're showing on the screen, but the win is in there. So it's not a big a question as it might otherwise be, and he certainly feels like a strong contender.
Yeah, it's a step up in class for King Max, but he looked pretty impressive in those last 2 starts, and he kept those very good class lines facing horses like Native Trail and Desert Crown in Europe last year. So as you throw up our picks for this Seagram Cup, I did put the number 6 King Max on top. I'll be interested to see if that 3-1 morning line holds up. He's one that I could see taking a little bit more money than that as the prices on he and the favorite might converge a little bit when the wagering opens, but I still think that he's shown some real talent, and I like him in this spot. Craig, you're going for the number 5 Carruthers to rebound.
I was torn. I almost sent in the same 6-6 on top as you have until I saw the morning line, and that's what swung me a little bit, the big disparity between the two. I did want to mention King Max's trainer has only shipped into Woodbine one time that I saw in Formulator, and he did win that race. So it's Not something he's done often, but it was successful. But I just couldn't resist Carruthers at what's going to be a much bigger price. I think that trip last time was really tough in a race I'm just lining through. So I think he offers some value here.
It's the number 6 King Max for me, the number 5 Carruthers for Craig, as we both try to beat that morning line favorite in the Grade 2 Seagram Cup on Saturday at Woodbine. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.